joy, happiness, energy, summer months, but also caution. And here's the kicker, cowardice. All of these things are symbolized by the color yellow. At the very beginning, we have these very cool colors, mostly grays, blues. Grace is immediately isolated as having the only warm colors and being surrounded by the cooler blue grays, while he himself is basically just like browns, dark orange. Pretty dark, pretty bleak beginning. This one right here, it is really the first frame that we have that is yellow, and it's ironic because we never get yellow from the sun, but right here, this yellow is from the sun, but not really. It's from a digital recording of the sun. And this is their goal. This is what they're trying to go to. They're trying to get a home back that they lost. And this is the first proper scene on Earth. But the colors here are still pretty muted. This, like I said before in the other video, this jacket here is supposed to, that looks like pretty much the most yellow thing, but it's still very muted and very gray. Very desaturated. As opposed to this image, this very ugly image that I love, that is very warm. And I think this says something about him coming into his own person again and remembering who he is. Here you can see that he has yellow mustard, not red ketchup, and there's actually a reason that he uses yellow mustard and not red ketchup, and it's not because the theme of the film is yellow, it's actually because ketchup is disgusting and mustard is much better. Here we have a very gray space, very muted, switching back to, boom, a yellow wash of light. Again, him trying to figure out who he is. Brown, 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 brown. It's all brown. Even Strat and Grace, they match for once. See this? Yellow. And he's running away. Yet the planet being dreary, gray, and cold, he represents the plan, the mission, the hope for the future, the home that they all want to return to. Usually with colors, you're able to foreshadow, like his yellow jacket foreshadowing the yellow astronaut. But this scene is about uncertainty and not knowing what or why anything is going on. This has got to be, I think, the most important frame that I want to talk about, because there's no yellow in this scene. He matches the background just like he did in his classroom. And if yellow is representing choice and decision, I think yellow represents the lack of decision on Grace's part. All the decisions about his life, they're in this movie, they're made for him by other people. But right here, this is one of the scenes where he isn't coerced, he isn't forced to join the mission, to join the project. He asks to join. He wants to. That's his choice. Also, we have a little warm light yellow here. Yellow on this plaque of the solar system, of engravings of the sun. The plaques kind of with engravings of the mission. He's in a space that he chose to be in. And then we get to this scene, and he's wearing that yellow jacket, and he's getting put on a jet that he doesn't want to be on. And here we go, right here. Grace is being isolated, again, in warm colors, surrounded by the cooler colors. He didn't want to do this. He's coerced, he's forced to go in and stand in front of all these people. Right here, you can see it especially well. He's just right smack dab in the center of the screen. He's the most yellow spot that is very desaturated yellow, very dark. But compared to the rest of it, that is just basically gray, he is just isolated incredibly well here. He's wearing the yellow spacesuit that he never wanted to wear. At this point in the movie, we don't know that yet, but it's great foreshadowing. An amazing parallel to the next scene of him, boom, wearing the jacket. It's a bright yellow jacket. On the screen, it's desaturated, it's dark, it's a little muddy, but compared to the rest of the scene, it's still the brightest yellow. Here's just some more examples of him being pretty much isolated in that yellow. Here he is again. I really like this because he's in that yellow jumper thing. This is actually the scene that he jumps out of the chair because it says pilot detected. And he's like, nope, nope, nope. He's running away again in his yellow. Then, I actually really like this. Grace's spaceship is now isolated, not in yellow, but because of yellow. These little speckles of light, they're obviously a very desaturated yellow, which is a great contrast to Grace's spaceship that is white, which is arguably Grace's true color, the color that represents his true self, his true decisions, if we allowed him to do everything that he actually wanted to do and to do none of the things that he didn't want to do. And eventually he sheds the yellow jacket, he puts on a bolder red here, and he starts to be a little brave. Obviously, in the long run, that bravery, with that little bit of yellow light still in the background of, you know, saying that he didn't entirely choose to be here, but maybe who he is, and therefore the decisions that he makes is starting to change. No yellow, no yellow, no yellow. He actually chose to be there, right here in his little thing that goes along with his spacesuit. He's starting to get more comfortable with being where he is. We are here back in the black and white tunnel, and boom, we meet Rocky. The lighting is still pretty unevenly spaced. We're uncertain here, but there's no yellow. Rocky himself, like, is technically, I guess, yellow. He's a rock. But honestly, he's more close to gray than anything else. And I like the little green here, especially the little green thing that he has, which is something I think the Iridians do with their mates, I'm pretty sure. Which is so cute, with the green reflecting the planet Adrian. I'm not here to talk about green or how cute Rocky is, but it leads up to this moment. Right after Grace figures out that they're there for the same reason, we've got kind of the backlit of the yellow wash. And then we contrast to this. They're all in yellow. They're all in their space yellow. He's not in it. He matches more with the background, with the scientist, because he puts the not in astronaut. This scene is pretty great for my argument because it's the party, it's everybody on the project, all under the same yellow light, whether they're astronauts or not, scientists or not, they're all under the same warm light. I really do like, though, right here, how Strat is framed in front of the TV, how we've got the opposite of Grace, who is usually a spot of warmth in the center of a very cool environment, but now Strat is backlit by a much cooler lighting and becomes the center of a very warm environment. But what's beautiful about this scene is that this is the scene where Rocky discovers that Grace can't go home. He's gonna die in space. Here's Grace again, trapped in that tunnel, trapped in the yellow light, but he gets to go home, or to Earth, I should say. Not because of anything he did, not because of any decisions he made. He had no say in the matter, but because Rocky was kind enough. That was Rocky's decision. That was Rocky's generosity. Right here, this, I'm gonna call back to this too later on, where Grace and Rocky are together, but they're in the shadow. They're still in the yellow light in the background. And that is a very stark contrast to something later that I'll show you. And then we get to this scene that basically writes Grace's fate in stone. Strat being completely shrouded in black, Grace being the only bright thing in the entire scene. Not only that, but boom, he's the only speck of color. This is all monotone. He's the only speck of color in this entire frame right here, this entire scene. And then we go from that to green scene. We are on Adrian. We're finally starting to get more color into the film. This frame right here, this frame is perfect. Grace is being tricked, and we as the audience are also being tricked. If yellow represents Grace's inability to make his own decisions as his own person, this is the scene that Strat tells him that he has 3 hours to make a decision. He's not wearing the yellow jacket. We as the audience genuinely believe that he's got a decision. However, that yellow jacket is still there. It's on the chair. There's no decision. It's been made for him. We've got the yellow here, Grace's inability to control the critical state that Rocky is now in. especially with the yellow background here. However, it contrasts this scene. Rocky isn't washed in that yellow light. He's actually in white light, because that decision was about Rocky saving the life of his friend. This next scene is very beautiful because it's another part of the film where we start rapidly switching. It's probably the most extreme example of this, being this kind of like brighter light, muddled tone. This is even purple. We've never seen that before. We've got this kind of black and white frame, this darker frame with a little bit of light there. We've got a bit more clear lighting in the lab. We've got mottled lighting on top of the uncertainty of Rocky's condition. We've got Grace in the dark, Grace in the light, black and white again. Then we're back to yellow, of course, because we have to be super bright lighting, super dark. We've got this really saturated blue here, which is kind of crazy. It's very extreme. This whole scene is very extreme compared to the rest of the movie. Until finally, the white lights start to come back on. Grace is with his friend again. I want to think about too that other image of the first hug with Rocky when there is yellow light behind them both and they're in the shadow, as opposed to right here when Grace's face is in the light and it's white light. We've got some yellow lights in here, and especially right here where everything is dark. But there's one little piece of Grace all lit up in the yellow light, the last piece of the puzzle, the last answer to the last question of how did Grace end up in space? And we've got the yellow jacket on because he doesn't want to go and he doesn't have a choice. And can we look right here, half of him being in this lighter tinted whitish blue versus the rest of the half of the frame that is yellow, wrapped up in a decision that he didn't make, to then being surrounded by the yellow light again in the tunnel. And I think that ultimately, surrounded by the yellow light, but still in that red spacesuit, even though it's his own decision to go back to Earth to complete the mission, the yellow light, I think, is saying that he really doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to leave Rocky. There was nothing for him on Earth. Rocky's his best friend. He didn't have any family back on Earth. He didn't even have a dog. And he really don't want to say goodbye to his best friend. But he kind of feels like he has to. Bye-bye, there they go. And then it starts changing again. The lighting will go from bright to more yellow to the dark tunnels, brighter again. It's all going to be flipping and switching as he's trying to make this decision. Do I go back? And right here we shed the yellow. We're in this tunnel, but there's no yellow in the tunnel like before. It's all white light because this was entirely Grace's decision. And then we get to strats. Gray monotone strat. Right here, Grace is again being isolated. But look at Strat. She's no longer just black and brown, brown, brown. She's still dressed in all black, but look at her. She's gray. There's no warmth left on planet Earth. And planet Earth is no longer home. It hasn't been for a really long time. That's when we get to this yellow scene. We've got this yellow giraffe here. Not a coincidence. The mission's over. This yellow now represents Grace's new home and the home that he chose. He's covering up the yellow bedspread with his very colorful quilt, and we're washed in this white light. And even though we've got yellow here to represent home, his idea of home is not a yellow sun. He likes the fog. And right here, I'm going to call back to that other frame where we've got this half with warmer brown colors and this half with the cooler blue colors. But look at Grace. He's happy. He chose to be here. He's not wearing that yellow jacket. There's no yellow here. This is brown and blue. We've even got some really muted greens up there. Look at that classroom setup. It's made out of his science lab. And the fog, the white light, it's synonymous to the natural white light coming in from his classroom at the very beginning, the place that he always wanted to be. And look, he's in a classroom. It's left open-ended for the audience, you know, like, does he go back home? Does he stay? But really, I think he is home. This is the home that he chose, that he created with the help of Rocky, of course. And that is how Yellow tells the story of Project Hail Mary. Yellow is the story. Yellow is the forced decision, the confusion. Yellow has a character arc of its own. At the beginning, not able to represent the bright warmth that the sun usually does, but instead representing that cowardice, the confusion, the entrapment, as opposed to the end of the story, where Yellow is no longer that yellow jacket that's the most saturated object on the frame. And it's not isolating Grace anymore. It's not trapping him. It has become his choice. Thanks for watching.
They told me that the end